So I sometimes hear people say that life was a lot easier in the past generation. It was easier to afford a house and all those other things because houses were so much cheaper. Well, in this video, we're going to look at the different things you have to consider when making that argument. So let's say I tell you that a house currently sells for $500,000, and you know that a generation or so ago was selling for $200,000. You could think, well, it was so much easier to afford a house then. Well, what other piece of information would you need to know to make that judgment? There's a bunch of things that you need to know to understand relative prices of houses in those days versus now. For one, you want to know what happened to inflation over this time. So what has happened to the price level over that time period? You could also think about, well, what was the wages for a worker like what you're doing right now in the past? And try to see, well, if the wages are now 200% more, well, how is that equating with the house? And another way to look at it is to look at, well, for you to afford this house now, how much proportion, like what percentage of your income do you have to allocate to things revolving around housing versus what percentage of their income in the past did they have to allocate around housing? Because although housing seemed to be a lot cheaper, there's other things to consider. There's a period that things were cheap, but then interest rates were like 10+%. So that's definitely going to have an impact on the actual costs. You can't just look at house price, but you have to look at the total cost of ownership. And also you want to keep in mind the different things that you can afford then versus now. So if you look at in the past, most people had their house, a small car per household and whatnot. And you look at most modern families have a house, several cars, and a bunch of other things. They're traveling more, they're doing a lot more things. So was life really easier then than it is now? Not necessarily. Maybe certain things were cheaper, but you have to look at a bunch of things to really evaluate that question. So I'd say at the very least, if you come up to one of these articles that shows like how prices of houses skyrocketed, you have to factor in all those other things to see to what extent houses are much less affordable now than they used to be. It's true that there's been some recent spikes in housing. So if you bought a house pre-pandemic compared to just after, you're paying a lot more for the same product. But that's like one quick instance, which was made sense to buy before than after. But otherwise, I wouldn't say that things are a lot more expensive since the pandemic till several years after the pandemic. So just keep that in mind. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real life examples. Have a good day.